The Hamilton Ticats lose 32-25 to the Montreal Alouettes in their final game of the regular season. I'm here with the Spec Steve Milton. And Steve, this game didn't mean anything in the standings. What do you take away from it?
A little worry if I'm a Ticat fan. I didn't see some of the things you needed to see today, particularly the defensive backfield. I thought they were weak again. But there were some things, I guess, that were encouraging, and but the two injuries to the Canadians, Mercer Timmis looks like he's going to be okay, but
Mike
Jones, that's very worrisome.
Yeah,
well, just depth. I mean, as you were mentioning to Coach Ken Austin during the scrum, these are guys that most people haven't heard a lot about. I mean, they know Timmis because he's a local kid, but really they haven't heard a lot about them in terms of production this year. But they're very important to the depth of the team.
I think we're going to take positives away from this game. We should start with Zach Collaros,
yes,
who only played a quarter, but I think looked sharp in that quarter. And if they're going to have success against Edmonton in the East Final, he's going to have to play well. If we're talking about concerns, you mentioned the secondary. I also, that offensive line. Now, not every starter was in there for the entire period of time, but it is pretty much the line that might be out there against Edmonton that played a significant part of that game, and the quarterbacks took some hits.
They did, and Winston Venable got in there 3 times, and you're going to play against a team with a bunch of Winston Venables next week, and that's a bit of an issue. I agree with you on Collaros, and that's the major positive, and it's not just what we saw, it's what he saw in himself. Because when you talk to him after the game, it's been very different than it was last week and a couple of other games. He felt positive about what he did, and I think that's really, really important. I don't think there's any other way to put this, Drew, but they got to score 30-plus next week.
Well, and I think that if we look ahead to next week just briefly, and we'll talk obviously a lot about next week,
sure.
But I think they are going to need some guys that haven't necessarily played at an elite level, like Collaros, like Brandon Banks, to play at that level against a good Edmonton team.
Yeah, they do. They're going to have to get better field position from the special teams. They were a little shaky again today, I thought, coverage and on return. They got to break him. I mean, that's part of this team is not only him breaking for touchdowns, but the field position that he can give the offense. As everybody knows, it's easier to play on a short field. So if you're the offense, and that didn't happen enough, and I think they need more of that. Again, they're going to have to score. This is the 4th time in 5 games, 30 points plus. It's not all the defense, because some of it was special teams, but that's not good enough at this point. I don't care if this was a lame duck game. That's what you had to work on today a lot, was holding the other team back, and I thought there were some misplays again.
7-11 for the regular season. It's the worst season under Kent Austin. They've also lost 4 straight at home, the first time they've done that since 2006. Those are not good indicators going into the playoffs.
No, they really aren't. And the one number that you could say is a good indicator, when it's not only that 4-10 in their last 14 regular season games at home. The one thing they have done is win the postseason at home. They won every time. Now, that's not really an indicator, because the last time that happened was a full year ago, and things have happened since then. But it does speak to the ability perhaps of the coaching staff and the core group to get up for that kind of postseason, which sounds a bit hollow when you hear it off a 7-11 team. It sounds hollow when they say, hey, we're going to be ready for this, because we feel that you probably can't turn that switch, but they've done it. They've done it 3 years in a row.
Well, and that was immediately the messaging coming out of Kent Austin after this game, which was, it doesn't really matter what's happened in this regular season. It matters what happens now. And that's the messaging they're going to try and deliver all week, which is, regardless of how much we've struggled, regardless of our record, the postseason is its own unique animal, and you can right a lot of wrongs from the regular season by just having a couple of good games when it really matters.
That said, and I agree 100% with that, Drew, that said, there's also no room for the kind of inconsistency or errors. You can't make 1 or 2 in the first quarter and say, we'll make it up later in the game, which is what happened against Edmonton in the first game. That won't happen this time. You make those 2 errors in the first quarter, there's real trouble.
All right, make sure you check out Monday's Spectator for all the news out of this game, and make sure you check out 3 Down Nation all week long. We'll have tons of playoff preview coverage. Reporting from Tim Hortons Field with Steve Milton, I'm Drew Edwards.